No. Ah! Smoke and flames. Cheaper than putting the heating on at the minute anyway. Hey up troops, it's A Littleton here again with another video, and this time we're looking at a massively underrated operator in my opinion, CAPITAO. CAPITAO fires fire and smoke from a crossbow. I mean, that sounds good, right? And he has a gun 6, and he has hard breach charges, and he's a 3-speed, and he's got 2 good guns. He's unreal. Nobody plays him though. So in this video, we'll go through the basics of how his crossbow works to start with, and there's some really interesting mechanics with how it works when you use the smoke or the fire. They both work differently. It's an interesting way of getting people out of certain areas. We'll go through that later. Stick around, don't go anywhere. And then we'll also go through some best ways to use CAPITAO and some areas on maps where he's really useful. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you know I don't normally plug anything at the beginning of the video. However, do me a favor. If you haven't subbed to the channel yet, hit the sub button. It doesn't cost you a penny, and it makes me day. Also, I'm on Twitch and Twitter as well. The links are in the descriptions. Nice one. I'd say that was enough waffling for now, don't you? Right, let's get stuck into it. Right, then here he is. CAPITAO. Let's get into his loadout. So, CAPITAO has access to the Para 308, the M249, the PRB 92, the Gon 6, the Claymore, and hard breach charges. Now, starting with the Para, it's one of my favorite guns in the game, even though I barely use it. The fire rate isn't the highest, but it's pretty decent at 650, but the damage at 48 is so high. Now, something that's really weird about the Para, which I really like, is the sound. I know that's not really a full reason to play a gun, but the sound is absolutely quality. It sounds, I don't know, like meaty and chunky in a way. It sounds really good and it's really fun to use. It's just a really well-balanced weapon when you're on attack. Fire rate's easy to control, very little recoil, and 48 damage. I think it's top quality personally. The M249 is a decent LMG, decent capacity at 100 obviously. There's just a really, really long reload time with it. And since the new patch for Year 7 Season 3 Brutal Swarm, the reload, I've said that twice now. The recoil, not reload, recoil on LMGs is considerably worse, so I don't think that's a good option anymore. If you can control LMGs and you fire in short bursts, then obviously go for it. If anyone's watching this who plays on console, I believe that the LMG recoil on console isn't as bad anymore, so if you want to use that on console, obviously go for it, but I really like the Para personally. In terms of sidearm, or secondary, whatever you want to call it, the PRB is just a standard pistol, really. You can't moan at it. However, the Gon 6 is just a really, really useful gadget to have in your pocket, whether it's for burning ADSs, burning Wamai magnets, which we'll come on to later on with CAPITAO, is really useful. Getting rid of Malusi Banshees and all the other good stuff you can destroy with this thing is really, really helpful, and I just think you should always take it. Obviously, the argument is, well, what if you've run out of ammo when you're primary? What are you going to do? Fire Gon 6 at someone? Doesn't really do much damage, so it does 10 damage to be specific. So, yeah, I get what you're saying, but you just have to play that consciously. People used to play Iona with 21 bullets in the ARX and still use a Gon 6 as a secondary. So just do that with you knowing you've got 30 bullets or 30 rounds in the Para. Secondary, I always go hard breach charges. They're really, really useful for whether it's opening hatches or whether it's... You don't want to be using your Gon 6 to open a hatch. I think that's a bit of a waste, personally. So whether it's opening a hatch, whether it's opening a reinforced wall, of course, but don't forget you can also get castle barricades, etc. with it. So really, really useful. Personally, for me, the loadout for CAPITAO is Para 308, Gon 6, and a hard breach charge. So onto CAPITAO's utility then. He has access to this here crossbow that you can see on the screen as we speak. Now, the two different things this crossbow can do is fire what I'm going to call fire bolts and smoke bolts. I think the official term is asphyxiating bolts and micro smoke grenades or something like that. But we're going to go with fire bolts and smoke bolts. Now, how do you know which one you're firing? There's 3 ways of telling. If you look at the crosshair, you can see that there's like lines around the dot with the fire. Swap to the smoke, there's no lines around the dot. If you look at the cartridge in the crossbow itself, you can see with the fire, it's an orange cartridge, and with the smokes, it's a blue cartridge. And finally, down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see that the top option has like a fiery icon next to the arrow in the bottom right, and the one below has smokes, and it switches when you swap between the two. So that's how you tell which one you're firing. So we're down here in our favorite testing area when it comes to showing off utility, and I can show you what each bolt does here. So just a quick one. When it comes to firing, we can see that that wall's 19 meters away. There is no bullet drop for the first 10 meters, and bullet drop is like the bolts are not affected by gravity for the first 10 meters. After 10 meters, the bolts start dipping slightly. It's not a great deal, but you just got to be aware. If you wanted to fire over there and you wanted this specific point here, you probably need to aim a little bit higher up to counter the gravity, or to account for the gravity, sorry. So, what does the firebolt do? Well, have a guess. fire it on the floor. And as you can see, it expands in 2 stages there to an area of fire on the floor that is 5 meters by 5 meters. It's quite a big area. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same size as a Goyo canister, but it's a pretty big area and pretty decent. When it comes to the smoke bolt, very, very similar thing, although not fire, it's smoke. Put it on the floor. Again, a very, very similar area. It's about 5 meters by 5 meters, but it's cylindrical or sort of circular shaped, sphere shaped, half a sphere. What's half a sphere? I don't know. Half a sphere shaped. So you can see that it's not quite 5 by 5 at the edges and at the top. It's 5 by 5 at the base. CAPITAO has 2 of those each, so 2 fire bolts and 2 smoke bolts. Something that I think is worth mentioning at this stage, there is no sort of, what's the right phrase? There's no size of the bolt that you fire. So we don't need a, you know, let's just say we were going to fire it through this wall. We don't need a hole that size to fire it through. Back in the day, you used to be able to fire it through a bullet hole when bullet holes were a thing. If anyone played Siege during bullet holes, that was a good time. But let's just punch a hole. I'll show you what I mean. So now we've got this hole. You can fire it through there if you want to. You can see it goes to the other side. There's the smoke. So there's no size that you need to fire it through. You can make a hole small enough. I don't know how I'm going to do that because this is going to make a much bigger hole. But anyway, that's a really poor example because this hole is bigger than this hole. But anyway, you get me point. You can fire it through any hole. Any hole is a goal with CAPITAO. Now, I haven't got a shield to show you here on Albo, but let's pretend there was a shield here because there's something worthwhile talking about shields. If you fire the bolt at a shield, the fire won't go behind the shield. It doesn't just flood any area that it hits. If it hits an object, it won't go beyond that object. Do you know what I mean? So if the firebolt hits the shield here on the corner of Albo with the smoke playing here, peeking here, going away, well, if the firebolt hits or the smoke bolt hits, it's going to stay in front of the shield, okay? It doesn't go behind object. So I can't demonstrate you this because I've only got 25 HP, as you can see in the bottom left. But let me tell you this, and this is interesting. The firebolt does 12 damage per tick and does 3 ticks per second. So you're going to be doing 36 damage a second. You know, if someone's in there for 2 seconds, that's 72 damage. Done and dusted. Thanks very much. But not a very long amount of time of being in the fire. So say it one more time. It does 12 damage per tick and 3 ticks per second. That's really not easy to say. 12 damage per tick, 3 ticks per second. Essentially, 36 damage a second. And the final bit to tell you really when it comes to the sort of stats of it, it lasts 10 seconds. So we stick it on the deck there. It was about 2750 when we put it down. It's going to start disappearing at sort of 2741, give or take. 2741. Or 2740, bang on, there we go. And when it comes to the smoke, do it at 35. Talk amongst yourselves for a second whilst we watch this. And there we go, at 25 it starts disappearing. So both bolts last for 10 seconds. Right, then we've drafted in a mate to explain, in my opinion, what the best feature of CAPITAO is. We know Jager catches throwables with his ADS, or throwables, shootables, objects that fly through the air. In Siege, for some reason, Jager doesn't capture CAPITAO's bolts, fire bolts, or smoke bolts, which is really, really strong for CAPITAO. So let's just give you an example. As we normally fire this, the ADS would normally catch it in the air if it was a flashbang or Ace, Salma, or Nomad Charge or something. But here we go. The ADS has absolutely no effect on the smoke or the firebolt. And the ADS is live. You can see it's lit up blue. It'll catch the Gon 6, but it didn't catch the firebolt and the smoke bolt. That, for me, is what makes CAPITAO really, really strong, because where people have got anchor positions behind ADSs, you don't need to worry about it because the bolts just completely bypass the ADS. Cheers, Jager. However, we've drafted... I don't know why I've said that like that. I'm sorry. However, we've drafted in another mate here, Mr. Wamai, who stuck us, very kindly, stuck us a couple of magnets up on the wall there. And let me just move Wamai away from the magnet slightly in case he gets his toes burnt. However, Wamai magnets do capture firebolts. And Wamai magnets do capture smoke bolts. But ADSs don't. So Wamai is a counter to CAPITAO, but Jager is not a counter. However, most of the time you're going to see ADSs on windows, doors, and protecting shields. That's where CAPITAO comes into his own. So Wamai does capture the bolts. Jager does not. Cheers, Wamai. Sorry, mate. Just a quick point of note before we get on to the examples of where he's useful. The CAPITAO firebolt does 0 damage to utility. So if you set an ADS on fire, for example, or you set a bandit battery on fire, it does no damage to utility whatsoever. Only does damage to players. And the hostage, actually, but only damage to players. So this feature of CAPITAO's bolt is the second best feature in my opinion after being able to bypass ADSs, and it only affects the firebolt. So First of all, let me just talk about the smoke bolt very quickly. The smoke bolt will activate wherever it hits the wall. So if we fire it there, you can see it went off in the middle. We can see people's toes, which is actually really good for making clever lines of sight where people are sort of holding this angle thinking they're covered, and you can shoot the toesies. However, the firebolt is completely different. It's exactly the same on the ceiling as well, by the way. Fire it on the ceiling, the smoke bolt will stick to wherever you fire it. The firebolt is completely different, and this is why it's really good. Let's just say there's a defender. This is a shield, by the way. We're using this as a shield. Let's just say a defender's hiding behind this shield, not peeking at... I know we can see over the shield, but we're just doing a bit of pretending here. We can't see over the shield. You can't get this defender out of the shield. So what we do... You can, and there's loads of places that you can do this, and I'll go through some at the end of the video where it's useful. What happens when you shoot the firebolt is it hits the ceiling or the wall or wherever it hits, and will drop to the floor directly down from where it first makes contact. So, if I fire this firebolt here, it'll then drop directly down somewhere in this area from being completely vertical from where it hit. If I fire it at the wall here, it'll drop directly down to here. Let me show you what I mean. So if you've got someone behind this shield and we can't get them out, if you were to fire the firebolt above them, here, the firebolt then drops down behind them vertically from where it initially hits. As you can see, it lights up the area behind them. There's a ton of places where this is unbelievably useful to get people out of anchor spots. So let's just think, I mean, I'm going to show you the examples, but up here on Big Window, on Oregon, there's half wall on Border. There's a ton of places where it's really, really useful. We'll go through 3 of them or so at the end of this video. So, yeah, just remember, if there's someone hiding behind something and you need to get fire behind there to get them out, let me go and use the desk and security as another example. Again, if we fire a firebolt straight at this here, it'll just drop in front of us and won't go behind it. We fire it above, mind your toes, and as you can see, the fire goes behind. A really, really useful mechanic to know. Okay, so where is CAPITAO good? So I'm going to use Big Window on Oregon as the first example, and I'm going to show you 2 reasons of why he's good here using his gadget both times. So quite often get someone playing in this area here called Hobo. You're going to be holding Big Window here, or swinging around to here and holding it there. Imagine if you could get an angle onto Big Window through that. Imagine. So they're going to be holding here. There's not really much you can do other than nade from below or use other bits of utility to get them out. So unless they're going to peek around that bed... Sorry, I just had to cough then. I'm keeping it in. I'm not re-recording that. I had to cough. I'm sorry. Unless they're going to peek around that bed, you're not going to get them out of there. So if you've got ADSs on the window here and you can't nade them out of there, obviously you could nade them from below, but that means clearing below as well. CAPITAO's firebolt. We fire it at the ceiling behind the bed. We know it hits the ceiling and drops straight down, and all of a sudden that area where the defender wants to play is toasty on the toes. The other thing CAPITAO is good at in this area of the map is you can do that, so you can get the guy out of Hobo, so you know he's not in there. But then you can also smoke off the feet holes. I've made some tremendous feet holes there. You can also smoke off the feet holes, so the defender can't hold it as you jump in. So you smoke off the feet hole. I'll do it both together once the smoke runs out. So you can make a push by getting the guy off the flames there, smoke your feet holes, and in you go. Don't step in the fire yourself though. But you can see why his gadget's useful, and 2 examples there just on Big Window. So the next place we're going to use an example is half wall on Border. You don't necessarily need to hit the ceiling here, because if you hit the back wall, the fire will spread to the front as well, with it being 5 meters. Obviously for me there is only 3, but I do prefer hitting the ceiling because then you know it's going to drop right in the middle. But yeah, if you want to get the guy out of half wall, there's loads of ADSs on this door normally. Pop that on the ceiling there. That's going to drop down directly into half wall, and that is an absolute freebie. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned, which I'm going to bring up now, is that ideally you do this with a teammate, because if you think about how long it takes to get the crossbow out, you fire the firebolt and you get your gun out at the whole time. You're vulnerable if somebody peeks over the top. So what you really need to do is speak to a teammate and say, listen, I'm about to put a firebolt behind half wall. Can you ADS half wall here like this? Obviously you've got to watch lockers, but hold an angle that's safe, essentially. Hold an angle, whether it's here or whatever, because the guy behind half wall is either going to stay where he is and die, or he's going to have to move. So if you get ready for him to sprint out, because if you try and swap from your crossbow straight back to your gun, they're going to be gone before you can swap over. So, teammate, you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. All right, sweet. Good night, Vienna. See how slow it is swapping back. That's why you've got to work with the teammate there. What I would suggest, by the way, if this ever happens to you, is you're probably going to die if you try and run away. So if you're behind half wall here and you get CAPITAO firebolted, if you go like this, you're probably going to die. What I think I would do is... This is a bit of an idiot thing to do, but what I would do is probably jump over the wall and just try and be aggressive onto the person who's holding the angle. Because if you run away there, 99 times out of 10... Whoa! I feel like we haven't said that for ages. 99 times out of 10, if you try and run away, you're going to get smoked. So, I don't know, listen, sometimes you have to beat idiots by being an idiot, right? So just jump over and get aggressive and see what you can do. So another place that CAPITAO is really, really useful is here on bank. Ideally, a thermite would open this breach, so you've got a bit more space to play with. It'd be a little bit more open than this. Let's just say it's there for now. So if you haven't got this hatch open, playing behind this bomb is a really difficult place to get somebody out of. Again, fire it at the ceiling behind. Obviously, you're not just going to stand in the doorway. You've got to be a bit more secret squirrel and peek around or get an angle wherever you want. This wall's soft. You can even use the tactic that I showed you earlier on where you can shoot through the wall. But get it behind the bomb, on the ceiling, drop it down behind. Now, this just doesn't go for bank. That's really close to my toes. This doesn't just go for bank. This goes for every site where people are anchoring behind the bomb. Remember, you can just drop it on the ceiling above and it'll drop down to behind the bomb. Now, this site's an interesting one with CAPITAO because you can block off the line of sight and stop the push through the door as well. Obviously, there's going to be a rotate here 99 times out of 10. Oh, that's twice this video. What a treat. There's going to be a rotate here so people can push through here. What you want to try and do, and this goes for smoke grenades as well, not just CAPITAO here. When you're smoking and you're planting, you don't want to smoke the area that you're planting. You want to smoke the area that the enemy has to walk through. So the enemy is going to have to walk through this door and this rotate if you want to try and stop the plant. So you should smoke the rotate and smoke the door because the enemy is pushing through blind. Well, if you just smoke this area where you're planting here, the enemy can come through the door free of charge, assuming you've not got anyone covering the door, obviously. You can come through the door free of charge, walk up to the smoke, they know exactly where you are because you're in the smoke. Smoke off the areas they have to push through, and it makes everyone miles more nervous, and it's miles more difficult for the enemy. So, if you were planting here as a CAPITAO, I know people would normally be shooting at me here, but I know they're not. So, smoke off the rotate, smoke off the door. You can even flame off the door to stop them pushing through. Turn around, get the plant down. So, use that. I mean, this side's perfect for it. Look at that. How is any defender stopping that sort of utility there? Can't push through there. This is smoked off. CAPITAO is so good, man. So there we have it. That's CAPITAO, an immensely underused operator, in my opinion. I think he's absolutely class. He's got everything: smokes, fire, gun 6, hard breach charges, 2 good guns. He's a 3-speed. He's class. For those of you that don't know, I also stream on Twitch 4 days a week, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 PM UK time. Name is exactly the same on Twitch as it is on YouTube. So if you haven't gone over there yet, go over there like right now. Nice one. Other than that, that wraps us up for this time, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers!